Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Bahril Ulum. I am an English language education student in English Department, Faculty of Languages and Arts, Universitas Negeri Semarang. This video is made for my final project defense as the requirements of Sarjana Pendidikan degree in English language education. My final project is under the title The Interpersonal Meaning in a speech by Greta Thunberg in the UN Climate Action Summit 2019. But before we are going to discuss my research findings and discussion, I'd like to show you the content of this video. The first one is chapter 1, consists of research background, reasons for choosing the topic, and research problems. In chapter 2, we are going to discuss the review of previous research, a theoretical background, and theoretical framework. Then in chapter 3, I'm going to present the research design, research instruments, and data analysis method. After that, this is the main point of my final project, which is the chapter 4, consists of the research findings and discussion. Lastly, in the chapter 5, I'd like to draw some conclusions from my research findings and discussion. Then I also present the suggestions for the next researchers and the readers in general. Without further ado, let's go to the first chapter. In the research background, I'd like to show you the reason why I conduct this research. Language has been used by humans for a variety of reasons, such as delivering messages, discussing about something, inviting someone to come in, many more. As stated by Hadiani, there are two main purposes of language. They are to exchange information and to build social relationships. We use language as a tool of communication every day. And in doing that communication, today we have so many ways and media. We can send messages through social media such as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or we can also talk to someone from other country by a phone and even make a video call. But let's go back to the past and we can find a powerful media that has been used 1,000 years to send messages. It's called as a speech. Jen Suo explained that a speech is one of the many ways to communicate. It is a direct and efficient tool to convey emotions, provide information, and develop a social and personal relationship. A good speaker will easily change the people's mind and trigger a movement if he properly uses interpersonal meta function. And Greta Thunberg is one of these good speakers. Greta Tintin Eleonora Thunberg is an environmental activist from Sweden. She was born on January the 3rd, 2003. When she was 15, she started to protest by holding a sign that said "School Strike for Climate" outside the Swedish parliament in order to push the policymakers to meet the carbon emission target. And it inspired other young generations around the world to do their own demonstration. And then after that, she was contacted by a lot of individuals to speak about environmental topics. And one of them is her passionate words at the United Nations Climate Action Summit in 2019 that attracted a huge amount of attention. Therefore, it is interesting to find how she could write that speech which influenced people's perceptions about climate change. Why I choose Thunberg's speech for my final project? There are two reasons. First, most of the previous research of interpersonal meaning are about political speeches. It is reasonable to examine such speech because it usually has an impact on society. However, even Thunberg is not a political figure. What he said still could make a huge change to the world. Secondly, the speech attracted many attention. Thunberg crossed the Atlantic in a zero-emission yacht to New York City as the place of the summit. In her speech, she angeringly warned international leaders that they were not doing enough. After Thunberg was only 16 years old when delivered the speech, she in fact is just a child. Her obligation is to attend school, but she was there at the time. After saying there is such a background and the reasons for choosing the topic, I propose two statements of the problems. The first one is what are the modes that relies in the speech, and the second one is what are the modalities that relies in the speech. That is my chapter 1, and now we go to chapter 2. In the review of previous research, I served six research that are related to this final project. First one is from Apriliani and Priyatmojo, who researched about Joko Widodo address at the APEC CEO Summit 2014. The speaker is success in presenting the ideas and thoughts while also constructing a convincing speech. The second one is from Ping and Ling Ling, who analyzed interpersonal meaning in political speeches by Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. The median model operator takes the high spot in both speeches, make them less forceful, and in this regard, Trump is better than Hillary. That one is from Young, who analyzed interpersonal meta function in Barack Obama address. Declarative clauses in the address are effective in encouraging the audience to face the recent problems together. And the fourth research is from Kondowe, who examines a speech by Malawi President Binguwa Mutharika. Kondowe finds that Mutharika doesn't able to build a good interpersonal relationship with the people because he construct a barrier. The next one is from Sagir Kasim Sipran Safi and Muhsin, who study I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. The speech contains a dominant use of declarative, which aids in building connection with the audience. And then the last research is by Lauren, who analyzed interpersonal meaning in another Thunberg speech, Civil Society for Renaissance. She is using critical discourse analysis. In that speech, Thunberg attempts to persuade the audience by imposing her attitude, opinion, mindset, and viewpoints about climate change. Okay, that's all about the previous research. Now we are going to theoretical background. And this research is based on Halliday's systemic functional linguistic theory. And for a definition of interpersonal meaning, I use Eigen's definition because it's the most relevant. Eigen's mentioned about role relationship and attitudes to others. In terms of musicism, Halliday imitation theory is used as it is highly related to what speaker does in her speech about giving information in the dialogue. Meanwhile, in terms of modality, against theory is giving a clear guideline to the study. He categorized modality to modalization and modulation. That's all for the theoretical background. Now we are going to discuss the theoretical framework. I choose a speech by Greta Thunberg as a research object, which aims to analyze its interpersonal meaning through the mood system and modality. Therefore, to achieve that objective, I have to understand the first theory of interpersonal meaning, which is taken from Atkins, and then after that, I also have to understand the theory of mood system immortality, which are taken from Halliday, Matheson, and Higgins. Well, this is chapter 2, and for the research methodology, we are going to discuss in the chapter 3. Firstly, the research design. Objective of this research was to analyze interpersonal meaning in the transcription of Greta Thunberg's speech. Therefore, a descriptive discourse analysis with qualitative approach was chosen. I use this theory as it clearly defines the purpose of a descriptive discourse analysis, which is to explain the way language works, just as physicists whose goal is to describe the way physical world works. And then since the writer used a qualitative approach in the research instrument was the writer himself with the help of a data sheet form. This form helped the writer in recording the data obtained through documentation method. There are columns of numbers and clauses, so it was easy to find out the number of clauses that exist. This form also helped the data analysis process because there are columns that clearly separated the structure of mood and residue. Besides, there are also columns that separate both mood and residue elements. As a result, it is easier for determining the mood type. In addition, there is also a column that shows the degree of modality that found in the clause. This symbol S is for subject, F a finite, P predicator, C a complement, A adjunct, L for low, M median, and H for high. The next one is a data analysis method. The first step that I did was dividing data into clauses and then analyzing them through the mood system and modality using relevant theories. In this case, the data source was the speech transcription. It was broken down per sentence, but because the data in this study were clauses, sentences with more than one clause were divided into clauses. After getting the findings of analysis, I tabulated them based on each category, such as subject, finite, mood type, and modality. Finally, the writer came to a conclusion of the research. That's all for the chapter 1, 2, and 3. Now we are going to discuss my findings and discussion. In these findings of research, I divided it into two subchapters following the number of problems. First one is analysis of mood. In Thunberg's speech, the subjects found were I, you, we, they, and other nouns or noun phrases. As you can see from the table that in the speech, the subject you appeared dominantly and referred to the international leaders as the audience. In terms of finite, Thunberg's speech contained two types of finite, temporal and modal. Temporal refers to time and modal refers to modality. Therefore, its analysis would go into further detail on modality section. To make the findings of temporal operators more understandable, they are explained as primary tense. As you can see, the speaker use three kinds of tense: past, present, future. Four clauses contain past tenses, 37 clauses contain present tense, and four clauses contain future tense. The speaker conveyed the general truth at the time of speaking, therefore the majority of clauses in the speech employed present tense. What the speaker expressed was her actual state at the moment she spoke. In terms of mood types, Thunberg used all the types of mood. And the table indicates that 42 clauses were declarative, 4 clauses were interrogative, 2 clauses were imperative, and the rest 2 clauses were exclamative. According to the findings, the speaker's most common mood type was declarative. She used it to provide as much information to the audience as possible. Let's move on to the next analysis of modality. Finite model operators were used in this speech. Modal will was used three times, and should was used twice. Meanwhile, modal can, may, and would only use once. Modal will has two meanings in modality system as a future tense indicator and as an expression of strong termination. Well, that's all about the findings. Now we are going to the discussion. The first one is a realization of boot system. The writer discovers that Thunberg employs many kind of subjects, but the subject "you" is used more frequently, and it refers to the audience. She is addressing in front of lots of state and government heads, corporate executives, and high civil society members from all over the world, accusing their inaction and half measures toward climate change. And nevertheless, this finding is similar with Lauren, who studies another Thunberg speech, civil society for renaissance. The subject "you" in the speech refers to the audience, who are European politicians, and demonstrate that they should bear the brunt of the responsibility. In contrast, Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech that is analyzed by Sagir et al. The subject "you" there suggests that the speaker is sympathizing and fully aware of the sufferings that the people have experienced for the liberation fight. According to the findings, Thunberg mostly conveys the general truth at the time of speaking. As a result, the majority of classes employs present tense. Ping and Ling Ling also find in election speeches by Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, both candidates use present tense to describe current internal and global issues. Meanwhile, President Widodo uses a present tense to express Indonesia's economic goals. The findings also show that declarative clauses are the most common form. Thunberg cites more than 30 years of scientific data demonstrating the dangers of continued global warming and slams lawmakers who know that fact but do nothing. Furthermore, this is not the first study to show that declarative clauses are the most common sort of clause. Lauren, in another Thunberg speech, finds that declarative is used by the speaker to communicate a knowledge about climate change, its danger, and prevention. Meanwhile, Apriliani and Mojo, in the speech by Joko Widodo, find the speaker uses declarative to provide information on the recent situation in Indonesia. The next discussion is about realization of modality. Thunberg utilizes a five finite model operator, and the most dominant one is a modal will. It is used as a future tense indicator and expression of strong determination. As a future tense indicator, a will is used twice to foretell the future. Thunberg sets the climate problems, CO2 budget, and the world status, which will lead us to a mass extinction. She also forecasts that there will be no solution to prevent climate change since she no longer believes the international leaders. Uh, Meanwhile, as an expression of strong determination, it is used once to identify the audience as the actor responsible for climate change. So she offers a warning stating that she and other people will not remain silent about their ignorance. Moreover, Mutharika used will to forecast his upcoming tenure and demonstrate his strong ambition to continue growing Malawi. On the other hand, Barack Obama's repeated use of will in his speech is successful in demonstrating his strong intellect and create a desire to lead Americans through the problems. Well, that's all about the chapter 4. Finally, now we are going to the last chapter. In this conclusion, I divided it into two parts as the answers of the two research problems. For the problem number one, what moods that relies in the speech? The subjects found are I, you, they, we, and other nouns or noun phrases. However, the subject you appears dominantly. In terms of finite, the speech contains temporal and modal operators. A temporal refers to time, and modal refers to modality. Thunberg mostly conveys the general truth at the time of speaking. There are the majority of classes employs present tense. Meanwhile, the speaker's most common mood type is declarative. For the problem number two, what modalities that relies on the speech? Thunberg uses five finite modal operators, which are a will, should, can, may, and would. Modal will appears dominantly to foretell the future and to express a strong determination. After completing the research, there are some suggestions. First one, the writer suggests other researchers who are interested in researching this speech to use another meta functions, namely textual and ideational. Second one, the writer suggests readers that when constructing an effective speech, several factors must be considered, including the choice of subject, finite, mood type, and modality, because they have a significant impact on the content of a speech. The last one, in terms of creating a speech that will successfully persuade the audience, we must conduct research first to obtain accurate data that will help us in achieving the speech objective. So that's all about my final project. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.